Welcome to the Undercovers podcast. I'm Ben along with Paul. Connor is out giving ghost tours tonight, so
Ghost
he
tours, yeah.
he will be back with us hopefully next week, so we can have the whole crew together.
I know.
Maybe he'll have one more because of Halloween,
Halloween.
but we are back to talk some Bills football tonight. The Bills, of course, are coming off of a huge 34-10 win over the Tennessee Titans, and it wasn't pretty early, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I just wanted to kind of bring something up because I guess it's some interesting food for thought. So there's a interesting name that's potentially on the trade block right now.
hmm
And I mean, this team isn't necessarily out of contention because I mean, they're still only what 2 games behind Seattle for the division lead, and I think they still have to
hmm
play Seattle twice. So, I mean, the Rams are considering moving on from Cup, which is really interesting considering they haven't had him or Puka basically all season. But they're, of course, Bills Mafia. I mean, we got one new toy last week, and I mean, we can't really help ourselves as far as um, just shiny new toys, but Cooper Cup, is that a possibility? I mean, I would say probably no. Like, I mean, just look at the production on Sunday. We'll get into the numbers later, but I mean, the Bills wide receiver core has looked as good as it has, I would
It
say,
does.
probably since 2020 when we had
hmm
Gabe Davis as the number 4, McKenzie as the gadget guy, Beasley and Brown. I mean, now if you include Kincaid, like I said last week, this might be the best offense that Josh has played with. I think there's maybe other positions that need to be addressed first. I mean, if you can steal him from the Rams and they'll eat his contract, but I mean, today they were talking about a second round pick for him. And me personally, I wouldn't give up a second round pick for Cup because as
hmm
talented as he is 32. Is he 32 years old? Let me look up his age. I think I read today he was 32. I
He's
mean,
up
I know
there in age, and
31.
you're
Okay,
two times
31.
two.
But he's mostly a slot guy, and that would, I think, actually interfere with Shakir's slot usage, which we saw Sunday. He was deadly from the slot, and he's kind of injury prone. So I don't know if I want to trade such a valuable asset for an older receiver with a big contract who you don't even know if he'll be available come January. So I think they're good where they're at. Like, my preference would maybe be Hopkins if you can potentially pull that off, because at least with Hopkins, he's another boundary guy. Um, the Bills just already, I mean, there was a post last week from Jetpack Galileo about how they have like a big slot, a little slot, a true slot, like a fast slot. Like the Bills have so many guys, even Cooper, not Cooper Cup, Amari Cooper. I was thinking about the other Cooper, but Amari Cooper showed off his first touchdown from the slot. So that's something you can even move Amari into. So I don't necessarily think it should be a discussion because you still have Curtis Samuel, who was injured Sunday, but I would like to see, because we saw what Shakir and Coleman could do once they moved down a slot on the depth chart. I think it would also do wonders for Curtis Samuel, who they are still giving a decent contract to and will have to pay the next couple of seasons. So for me personally, I would look at other positions of need via trade. My preference is another edge rusher. I think Zadarius Smith is a perfect candidate. Has a 700,000 cap hit the rest of the year, so kind of similar to Amari Cooper. And he has 4 sacks on the season, and he has multiple double-digit sack seasons. And I think edge rushers kind of hold up better as they get older than wide receivers, anyways. And Smith is still only 32, so he's actually a couple years younger than Miller. I mean, if he has a good season, you could even maybe extend him next year because you are going to need more edge rushers because this is
hmm
presumably Von Miller's last season in town. So I would probably look at an edge rusher before I look to add a shiny new toy, because I think week by week, you're only going to see the improvements from the wide receiver core now that Josh is getting more chemistry, now that Keon's getting more adapted to the NFL, now that Shakir's getting healthier, and now that Cooper is learning the playbook and getting adjusted to the Bills team more. So I would probably lean no. I don't know about you on a Cooper Cup trade. As nice it would be this, unfortunately, this isn't really a real life Madden franchise. I mean, I know Braylon Allen posted something about it last week, but we saw with the Jets, that was probably the fifth most important move for them, because how much better did Devontae Adams make their run game? How much better did he make their pass blocking? How much better did he make their run defense or their safety play? Like, they still have I mean, I know they're getting Hassan Reddick back, or they're finally getting Hassan Reddick for the first time this week against New England. Now they finally agreed to a deal, but I would say this would be more like need number 5 or maybe 3 or 4 for the Bills right now. But I'm actually very happy with the receiver core as constructed. I don't know about you.
I agree. I think the way you said it, like, we just got Cooper Cup. He looked really good on Sunday.
Amari Cooper.
Kia,
Other
yes,
Cooper.
Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper looked really good on Sunday for the Bills, and then Keon is starting to grow into his role on the team, and then you get Shakir, who's been reliable all season, and then there's Kincaid and the uses of Kincaid and Samuel. How are they going to be used in
And
the
can we
offense is
even
still
maybe
still a
use
worry.
Dawson Knox more in the passing game? Like, he's
Yeah.
still getting paid a lot on the cap hit, and it's really uh something that I feel like the Bills need to start using him more, because I don't think they should pay $10 million for a blocking tight end, and they can't really get out of his contract anytime soon anyway. So I would maybe try to I know he caught a touchdown last week and one pass, or 2 weeks ago he caught the touchdown against the Jets, and he caught a pass last week early on against Tennessee. But I would still like to see him get more involved in the passing attack. I think that's another weapon that we haven't really utilized the past couple of seasons. So I would say feed the guys you already have. Like, get Ray Davis more involved in the passing game even.
I would like to shore up this defense just a little bit more than the offense. I think the offense is going to mold itself into something elite and something fun to watch for the rest of the season. It's going to sustain, the Bills' success. The issue for me is, the defense. The Bills' run defense is like bottom tier in the NFL right now. They're like bottom 10, bottom 5 in some of the major statistical categories. So, I think shoring up the run defense, with either, you go out and get, maybe another linebacker or another edge rusher in Smith, or even a guy like the cap may not make this work, but like a Buda Baker or something like that for the safety position,
Yeah.
kind of shore it up, because the Bills are playing a lot of too high safety because they don't want to get beat over the top. So you get a guy like a Buda Baker to go with, Taylor Rapp, that kind of shores up, that kind of like that the over the top area. You can start playing maybe one high safeties and start putting more in the box, so you could start stopping the run just a little bit more. So I think a defensive acquisition would benefit the Bills more for the long term than grabbing another wide receiver, as in Cooper Cup, to this Bills team, because the Bills have enough weapons, have enough weapons already. You don't want too many weapons, because too many weapons can turn into a problem, can turn into target share problems, and then you're running into issues with wide receivers and not getting enough targets. Then it runs into the issues in the offense. So I think the Bills are set at wide receiver for right now, and with weapons wise, just use them in many different ways, because each player on the Bills wide receiver core can play in different areas. Like Coleman can go into slot, same thing with Cooper. Shakir could play outside and in the slot. So shore up this defense. Bills offense is okay for right now. I think as the season goes on, this team will look better on offense than what it has, in the first, 7 games. I mean, the Bills are the 4th highest scoring offense right now in the league, so I think we're okay.
Yes, and speaking of the offense, what grade would you give to Amari Cooper for his first game?
I'll give him an A minus. That first drop was minute he dropped the ball, was like, oh no, like the drops are coming up again. Cooper is getting paid what, $8,000 right now. So a drop or two is going to happen. For a guy that's only getting paid, $8,000 right now on the cap. But everything after that, he caught, which is great. And also he caught that touchdown. He had 4 catches for 66 yards with limited knowledge of the offense. That really in itself, making an impact in your first game without really knowing the offense, it just shows who Amari Cooper is. He's ready to learn and he's ready to jump into the offense that he really doesn't really know. But similarities with Dorsey and Brady also helps too. But way Brady used Amari Cooper was in the vertical route running and slash yards after catch. The longest catch for Cooper was 27 yards, but that was only on a 15-yard route that Cooper ran. So he picked up an extra 10, 11 yards after that. So I think the way that Joe Brady will use Amari Cooper is going to be fun to watch for the rest of the season because it just opens up, his 50-50 his ability to catch the 50-50 ball. We've seen it a few times, on Sunday, Josh Allen, just throwing it up there. He knows that Amari Cooper is going to come down with it. So you really see the trust between Josh and Cooper. And it's only Ben, 6 days already, with Cooper at One Bills Drive. So I think it was a really good day for Amari Cooper. And it's only just going to get stronger for the rest of the season.
I would actually have to give him an A plus, and I get it. He had that early drop, but as I said last week on the show, it's not just the production from Cooper that adding Amari Cooper does to the offense. This was Josh Allen's best game of the season by far from a passing standpoint, and it's the first time maybe even since Joe Brady took over that it looked like the Bills had a legit passing attack, because as we know last year they were so run heavy, and yet there were times that I think the Miami game, Josh may have went over 300 yards, but he still had 2 picks. But there were times where we saw some glimpses, and I get it, a lot of the production came in the second half, but to me, it opened everything up for everyone else on the passing game. The Bills receivers totaled 256 yards, including a career high 125 yards from Keon Coleman. Shakir had one of his best games of the season as well, and they really utilized him out of the slot. And they did what Coleman did best at FSC, which is just take a quick slant and use his speed, his size, and physicality and after catch ability. I mean, there's a couple plays where he almost broke long touchdowns, and then he almost caught that back shoulder one. I still think he did, and I think it was kind of I don't think there was enough evidence to overturn it. And it looked like at the end of the game, Josh was really trying to get him his touchdown, but still, best game by far of Keon Coleman's young career. Shakir was excellent. Kincaid, who I've been a little critical of in our group chat, really looked like he's starting to, blossom. So to me, I have to give him an A plus just for what he did to the rest of the passing attack.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, a lot of the production came in the first half. Now, is that slow start that the Bills kind of have been having at times, think the Houston game, the Baltimore game as well, is that more concerning than the run defense has been the last couple of weeks? Because run defense has also been a major weakness.
These are the two things that, that concern both Bills fans, slow starts and run defense. The Bills in the second half of games from week 1, I'm going to go down the list. This is how many points they've allowed in each game in the second half this year. Week 1, 3. Week 2, 0, 7, 14, 6, 3, 0. So that's down the list. That shows that Babbage can adjust from the first half to the second half. But I don't know how long that can sustain throughout the entire season. It might work against the Tennessee Titans because they're not, the best team in football. But does this work against a team like Kansas City or San Francisco, Detroit later in the season where, you start slow on offense and you start slow on defense? Are you able to adjust in the second half, to maybe come back from maybe being down 10 at half to these superior teams? I don't know, because it's concerning because, you look at other teams right now and you're like, okay, they can start slow, but they never come back. But we all know the Bills have the ability to come back, and that's something we're grateful to have. But there's going to be a point in time, you can just go back to the Houston game. They start slow, they couldn't get back in it, and Houston for the entire second half just shut the Bills down. And that's what's going to happen against tough teams. So it works against Tennessee, but it's not going to go work against, KC, San Francisco, and Detroit later in the season. So the Bills going to have to start figuring stuff out to get this offense and defense going quicker, or that 3-game stretch could be easily the same 3-game stretch we just saw like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I would say you have to be equally concerned from both of them because um, starting slow can definitely put you in a hole. But as we saw against Baltimore, if you start slow against Baltimore, that team can be a runaway freight train, no pun intended,
Yeah.
with Derrick Henry. And I don't want to spot that team a quick, double-digit lead again and have the offense be sputtering, and then the defense gets worn out because
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Henry's pounding the rock. But the problem is the run defense is poor, so that's going to lead to more scoring drives. It's going to leave Josh Allen on the bench. And the Houston game, the slow start was kind of an issue too. The only difference is they were running it with Agbuma Wale, or however you pronounce his name, in Akers. There was no Joe Mixon. Had Joe Mixon played in that game, that could have been a completely different ball game, and it could have been a lot uglier. I mean, and I think the Jets, part of the issue in their game is, yeah, Todd Downing might, be the title. His title might be offensive coordinator, play caller, but with Aaron Rodgers, they want to pass the ball as much as possible, especially now that they added Devontae Adams. And I think part of the reason the Bills were able to beat the Jets was because they went so pass heavy late in the game, and they kind of weren't leaning on Breece Hall, who's actually had a slow start to the season, but he looked very good against Buffalo. So I would say it's an equal concern. Now, shout out to our good friend, the Thigh Doctor. He had some really good news for the Bills defense going forward. If they can get Matt Milano back, they might actually be able to run some 3 linebacker sets, especially with the way Dorian Williams has been playing this season. And I also think they probably don't want to give Milano that much mileage anyways. They probably want to ease him back and use him mostly on passing downs. But I think in certain situations you could utilize all 3 linebackers. So to me, I think both are equally concerning. But I think the slow starts can be more corrected. I think it might take another game or two until Cooper and Allen really get that chemistry going and they're on the same page. So I would say both are something that definitely should be an area of concern for Bills fans for the rest of the season. Now, through 7 games, and Joe Brady definitely has a larger sample size, who has had a better start to the first 7 games, Joe Brady or Babbage? Now, I'm going to give a little caveat or technicality. I think last year, Joe Brady was definitely better over his first 7 games than this year, but I also understand he really hasn't had a receiver of Cooper's caliber on the roster this year. Last year he had Diggs, and defenses were constantly planning for that, which he was able to get very creative with and use Kincaid and Cook and Shakir in big ways. I think Babbage has done a fine job. I would say this year they've both kind of shown some rookie mistakes and young coordinator moves, like the Baltimore game. I think Babbage was way too conservative at first, and then when he started run blitzing in the second half, we were able to stop Derrick Henry to an extent, but the game had kind of gotten away from us at that point. And then Joe Brady did one of the dumbest play calls we've seen on that trick play, which almost got Josh hurt, and it lost all momentum in that Baltimore game. So I think there's both been some positives and some negatives. I think the trenches on the offense have been better, so I would probably lean Brady a little bit. I think there's still a little too much talent on this Bills defensive line, or they put too much investment for the run defense to be so porous. The safeties, I mean, Bobby Babbage came up as a safeties coach. Remember, he's the one who was the safeties coach when Poyer and Hyde got here and really developed into elite safeties. I would say Taylor Rapp is playing better, but Hamlin, I know he had a pick Sunday. He still leaves a little bit to be desired to me in his coverage. And I'm a little frustrated with what they're doing with Mike Edwards. I know he's had hamstring issues, but as you saw on Twitter from a post, someone said Mike Edwards is sick of the bench because someone said he had an illness last week and he liked that post. So there's something going on with Mike Edwards. They need to try him out and get him in the game because he's a good coverage safety. I mean, I'd say Hamlin might be better suited for 3 safety looks. Cole Bishop is still a work in progress. He could definitely develop a lot better, but this year he's not looked great. So I lean I lean Brady slightly, but I think it's pretty even. They've both shown some rookie mistakes.
Yeah, both look like at times, they look like really good play callers, and that sometimes, they've just made that one mistake and that makes your head shake. I'm probably gonna agree with you here. I'm probably gonna lean Brady because there's a lot of things on defense where I would like to see, adjust a little bit more. You know, even though this defense is somewhat young, I still think last year, the Bills for at points in time they looked like they were able to stop the run. They were able to get some more pressure. So I think last year the defense looked a little bit better than what it did this year. The run rush defense right now has 5.1 yards per carry, and that is 28th in the NFL. 132 yards rushing games allowed. That's 20th in the NFL. 340 yards allowed. That's 340 yards allowed per game. That's 20th in the NFL right now. So I think there's a lot of areas where this run defense and just overall defense can improve. That's where I kind of lean Brady because it seems like in the second half, even though the both play callers have been able to run a lot of good stuff in the second half. I just feel like Brady is just a little bit more in tune, a little bit more, with what he's calling. And Babbage at times seems like he's a little confused. Does he be aggressive or does he stay conservative? You go back to the Ravens game. You can even say maybe just a little bit this week. It's like, does he know when to call certain things? Like when is it right to, send a blitz? When is it not right to maybe ditch the game plan just for a half second so you could try something different mid game and see if that works. So I think that's where Babbage needs to learn just a little bit more. Brady, he has the fourth highest scoring offense right now, 199 points this year. And, through 5 games this season, he has 28.4 points per game. So I think he has the offense going in the right direction. Babbage, first time play caller, he's going to get better. I lean Brady having the better first 7 games of the NFL season. But what interesting nugget, Ben, that I found out, I compared Brady and Dorsey just for the first 7 games from this year and last year. Brady, as I just said, had averaged 28.4 points per game. Under Dorsey in the first 7 games last year, the Bills averaged 28.2 points per game. So it's
Wow,
somewhat
so nearly
similar.
identical. That's crazy.
Yeah, but
Now, I think the big caveat though is under Dorsey, the Bills really did not have any kind of run game, or just he kind of refused to run the football. But now they actually look like they have a legit run game under Brady. So that's the big thing to me with Joe Brady. Now you could say Dorsey may have had better passing concepts, which might be true, but he also played quarterback, so it makes sense that the quarterback would have better passing concepts. Interesting discussion. Now let's move on to our standout players of the game. For me, this one is easy and it's going to be a little biased, but I got to give props to Keon Coleman. 125 receiving yards, 4 catches on 7 targets. It should have been 5 on 7 targets for a touchdown too, but he was spectacular. You saw the run after catch ability. It looks like his routes are getting a little sharper. Even that play to Cooper, he was helping him be in the right spot, which you love to see a rookie helping out a seasoned vet like Amari
mhm.
Cooper. And again, he showed off his ability in the open field. And I don't know if you knew this, but Keon Coleman is second in the NFL in yards after catch per reception. With he's averaging about 10 yards after catch per reception. I know it a couple
That's
big
first among
ones.
rookies.
It's first among all receivers actually.
Oh, all
So
receivers.
yeah,
Nice. There
so
you go.
he's really I can just double check it, but I'm pretty sure I looked at it last night. But he's really starting to develop nicely. We knew he would be a little bit of a project, and it was very unfair expectations to kind of suggest he had to be the number one coming out of college in the second round. All right, I do stand corrected. Number 2 in the NFL in yard after catch per reception, but number 1 is a pretty good receiver who was a top 10 pick, and that's Jamison Williams. So
Yep.
he's in pretty good company. I think he's top 5 in yards or top 3 in yards per catch too. He's averaging about 20 over 20 yards per catch. And another interesting tidbit is if you look at expected yak or yak above the expectation, he's averaging 5 yards a catch greater than expected. So pretty much every one of his catch, he finds a way. And I think part of it is because of his basketball background. He returned punts at Florida State, and he's a big physical guy. But every catch, he's getting 5 more yards than is expected. So he's really doing a nice job of making all of his plays count. That's something you don't really see from the guy who he replaced. Just to kind of put it in perspective, I mean, he's not having a bad season by any stretch, but let's go and look at the numbers. Keon Coleman is averaging 10.5 yards after catch per reception. Gabe Davis is doing 2.6. That's almost an 8-yard difference, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, each catch, Keon's averaging 8 more yards after catch. So that really puts into perspective the inability, I guess, from Gabe Davis when it comes to yards after catch. So that's something the Bills were lacking the last couple of years. They're towards the bottom of the league in yards after catch per team. Right now, they're number 11 as a team, and Khalil Shakir is also up there with yards after catch. If you look at EPA, they're both top 10 receivers as far as EPA goes. And looking, Shakir's 8 in yards after catch per reception. I mean, he's in good company too, right behind Jaden Reed, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Tyler Johnson, Tucker Kraft, Jamison Williams. And I'm not trying to make this any drama about KC, but Coleman has more yards after catch per reception than both Rice and Worthy. So, I mean, Coleman has really stepped up the last couple of weeks and really starting to come into his own. And I think the more Amari Cooper gets integrated in this offense, I think that's only the sky's the limit for Keon. He's just going to keep getting better week in and week out.
If Connor was here, this is a 30-minute segment in itself. Just you two just clamoring over Keon Coleman. You you guys would just take the show, and I just sit here and just listen. You guys just clamor over Keon Coleman, and it's great. And he deserves all the flowers because he's just been the receiver that I asked for, you asked for, Connor asked for. All Bills Mafia asked for this, and he's just
and it's funny because outside of us, there weren't a lot of fans originally happy with the pick. They're like, oh man, we could have had Mitchell, we could have had Worthy, but it's part of it's been the off-field stuff and his personality, but I think his on-the-field play is starting to buy Bills Mafia into him like more and more week by week. And even around the NFL community, he's finally starting to get his props.
And he deserves it. I mean, he's going to turn into something that, Josh Allen might never have had had a rookie wide receiver, and he can grow with him. He will start to get better. Keon and Josh will start to get better off it, and you're starting to see it because knock on wood, Josh Allen still has 0 interceptions for the first 7 games of the season. My standout's going to go on defense. It's going to be Greg Rousseau. 6 QB hits on Sunday, 4 tackles. He had a half a sack, And this season, he has 18 pressures. That's 7 away from to break his career high in pressures from last year when he had 25. So, even though Groot isn't getting home and grabbing all those sacks, he's becoming to be a problem for opposing offensive lines. Uh, and he's just been able to get pressures. He's been able to affect quarterback when he creates those pressures. I would like to see Greg Rousseau to add up his sacks just a little bit more, but he's starting to form into something that we all thought he was going to turn into this season. This season, last season, maybe for the rest of his career here in Buffalo. So hopefully he continues to improve for the rest of the season. Grab more sacks. I believe this is a contract year for him, so he's
Yes.
also playing for a contract at the end of the season. So he's starting to turn the
Well, I
page just
think
a little bit more as the season
he
grows.
still has his fifth year, I believe, right?
I think we used the 5th year.
Right,
This,
but they
this,
picked it up. I think
mhm.
let me see. I think he still has one more year technically after this, right? Let me look. Shoot.
Maybe he's
Uh,
just playing for an extension.
he still is playing. He still would be playing for an extension, but I believe the Bills picked up his fifth year option. I'll double check that now. I mean, they did kind of the similar thing with that Oliver. This
Yeah,
is his
this is
fourth
this is
season.
club option. He's playing that this year. Oh wait, yeah, actually, this is he has
Yes,
2025.
yes,
Yes,
2025. So he's still playing for a contract, but we will have another year now. After week one, I'm not gonna lie, I thought he kind of disappeared after a huge
he
opening
did.
week. But if you
Yes,
watch that game last week, and I know some people say pressures sometimes are a meaningless stat, but those pressures really led to a lot of duress from Mason Rudolph. He was uncomfortable in the pocket pretty much from the get go. That game, it led to a lot of early and errant throws. It almost led to a couple turnovers. I'm really pleased with what I saw from Groot, and I think once you get Von back, especially with AJ has really started. He had a kind of a slow start to the season, but he should have 3 sacks over the last 2 games if it wasn't for the
hmm
refs bailing, bailing out Aaron Rodgers, which Rodgers even said was one of the worst
yeah,
calls ever. But I agree with Groot. It's going to be great if he can really turn it up another notch. We'll get Miller back. AJ is starting to look like the AJ of last year and before. So definitely, I think, both standouts definitely are well deserved. One on the offense, one on the defense. Let's get into our game picks right now.
yes. You have retaken the lead after
Let's
a
go.
6-3 week last week.
Okay, not bad. Not
Went
bad.
6. I also went 6-3. Connor just flipped that around. He went 3-6. So now he stands 500 and back in last place. We have 9 more picks this week, thanks to a loaded college football slate. We won't pick Texas this week because we all picked Texas last week
Yeah,
and
we all
kind of
jinxed them.
we jinxed them. So we're not going to pick Texas this week. Superstition aligns in this show, so we keep it away from superstitions to friends teams and our own personal teams of the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with the Eagles and Bengals. Connor has the Eagles. Where do you go?
I want to pick the Eagles because I don't really like Cincinnati per se, and they're an AFC rival, even though they're not really in the divisional race. My heart says Eagles, but watching the Bengals the last couple weeks, it seems like their defense is improving. The secondary is still a little weak, but they also are wearing those white Bengal uniforms, which
They
I don't
are.
think they're going to
Nice.
lose in. So give me the Bengals. I want the Eagles though, but I think the Bengals will win, especially since they're at home.
Yeah, I also have the Bengals here. Same with you. My heart says the Eagles. Just for the division. Just for playoff races. And all that means. But the Bengals are starting to turn a corner, kind of like the Baltimore Ravens at one point. They started 0-2 and they turned a corner and they have won 5 straight. So I think the Bengals are starting to mold into form. Next game pick goes to Tampa Bay, who just got torched and lost Chris Godwin, hoping for a speedy recovery for Chris Godwin, as they will host the Atlanta Falcons in a really important NFC South showdown.
Yes, and not only did they lose Godwin, they lost Mike Evans to at least after week 11 or 12. So they're very thin in the receiver department. And we saw yesterday their offense is totally different without Mike Evans. And I know Baker put up numbers. Atlanta was kind of flat last week, but I think they're due for a bounce back. And Tampa Bay's pass defense is just brutal right now. So, like Kirk Cousins said last week, I think they're going to walk into your trap and take over your trap. So give me the Falcons.
Ben having quotes ready to go always makes the show. I'm also going to go Atlanta. They're short. You Tampa Bay is short on wide receivers. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, the top two targets, for Baker Mayfield are not on the team. He's going to have to try to find somebody else, and they're going to have to. They're starting to look like Oklahoma right now, and wide receivers going to their third, fourth, fifth wide receiver. The Falcons, I think, pulled this out. Just injuries happen. Connor is going to stay Florida strong as he goes Tampa Bay in this game. Houston and Indy can be a very interesting, maybe sneaky game this weekend as the Texans host the Colts.
Yeah, talk about some very good games actually over the last couple years. Minus when the Colts went into Houston last year, they kind of rolled over them. Anthony Richardson had 2 early rushing touchdowns. He did end up leaving the game with a concussion, I believe, but the Colts were still able to win there. And then the last couple games, well, it's the last 3 games, the away teams have all won in that series. And the last couple games have came down to the wire. And I'm going to keep with the trend of the away team winning because I think Houston's a little banged up. Indy's actually getting some reinforcements back with, I don't know if Taylor's playing, but if he does, that's a huge get for the Colts offense. DeForest Buckner is supposed to be back, so I think that will solidify the run defense. And Nico Collins has just been the X factor in those games the last couple of years. You remember the first play of that Week 18 matchup last year was that deep bomb to Nico Collins. He also went for over 100 and maybe 30 yards week 1 against the Colts secondary, which has since actually gotten better week by week. Without Nico Collins, it's a completely different Houston offense. And I think this is a game that Coach Steichen and the Colts are definitely going to want, especially because they technically lost 2 games, back-to-back games to Houston, already the last game of last year where they ended their season and the first game of this year. So I think the Colts are going to go in there with revenge in mind. So give me the Colts.
The Colts are a very interesting team this year. They go from Anthony Richardson, getting hurt to, going to the old Joe Flacco, keeping them in the AFC South race and AFC playoff race. I don't know if Joe Flacco, if he goes this week, or is it if Richardson goes, I think the Colts have a chance to pull the upset. If Richardson can't go, I think Houston wins this by a pretty large amount. Just, I don't think Joe Flacco would be able to keep up with, Houston. So in that sense, I'm going to go Houston in this game. All signs might be pointing Joe Flacco. So I think the Houston Texans will pull this game out by a sizable, I wouldn't say a sizable amount, maybe 2 scores and get the win. Connor goes Houston. The game that was flexed from 1:00 to now it's a 4:25 game on Fox. The Washington Commanders against the Chicago Bears. It seems like Jaden Daniels is a little further away than expected to play this Sunday, so it might be Mariota at quarterback. Does that change your view on who you're going to pick today?
See, is the game in Washington?
It's in Washington.
Okay. So this is actually going to be a homecoming for Caleb. Remember, he grew up in the Washington area, and I think week by week he's gotten better. I favor the Bears defense versus the Washington defense, even though they have been playing very well. given maybe not as good personnel. I think Dan Quinn is just that good of a coach, but with Mariota playing, I think I heavily favor the Bears. Daniels, even if he does play, I think is going to be banged up, so he may not be as much of a threat because I doubt he'll run as much just because he doesn't want to get hurt worse. I still lean the Bears either way, so give me the Bears. The Bears.
The Bears. They are a fun team to watch this year. The Chicago Bears, they're young and fun to watch. Me me as watching a fun young Sabres team, that was a fun young Sabres team, just a few years ago before they were old and boring as they are right now. It always captivates me to watch young teams flourish and grow, and I think the Bears have, they're finally their franchise quarterback that they can rally around. You know, Jaden
Oh,
Daniels
the
not playing
Sabres.
this
Speaking of
weekend.
Sabres, they're up 2-0. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I know. Every time I watch them, they seem to lose. Every time I do watch them, they lose. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I'm a Sabres fan. I can't watch them because they always win when I don't watch. So, but back to the game pick. I'm going to go Chicago. Question at quarterback really concerns me for Washington. That Chicago defense, is mighty. Connor goes Washington in this game. The Sunday night game is Cowboys at 49ers. The Niners having questions at why all over their team with Bosa, Debo Samuel now with pneumonia, and George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. It seems like their entire team is injured on offense right now, but they still find ways to hang around in games. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a man curse that is boiled over to San Francisco. I saw an interesting post about it earlier. But now without Brandon Ayuk, I mean, I don't think either of these teams are good, but I think if Dallas is going to get San Fran, it's right now when they're kind of ripe for the picking. It doesn't sound like McCaffrey is going to play. Now, I know Shanahan is completely schooled. McCarthy, I think Dallas, since they're coming off the bye week, will probably just be more prepared because they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I know San Fran's going to want to bounce back after a very flat performance, and they really haven't had the season they've wanted to, coming off that Super Bowl loss as well. So, yeah, give me the Cowboys. This might be an interesting upset. It may not be that much of an upset, but give me Dallas.
Connor goes 49ers. This is a mid-off on Sunday Night Football. And, at the beginning of the season, this was a intriguing matchup, something that you would want to watch. Now it's like, okay, throw in a $100 bet, and hopefully you win a couple thousand and make this game interesting to watch. It's two teams that, it seems, if the 49ers, had their full team, they would be really good. And if the Cowboys spent money, they would actually be hanging around and not getting blown out every game. I don't know. This is an interesting game because I think my head leans Dallas, but I feel like the 49ers in some magical way wins this game because I think all signs point Dallas, but somehow the 49ers are going to win. I'm going to go San Francisco. Let's go to our college picks. We have 5 ranked games this weekend. We're picking 4 of them. We're going to start in the nightcap with number 8 LSU going on the road to A&M.
See, I made a mistake a couple weeks ago of picking against LSU in Death Valley at night. I'm not going to make the same mistake at Kyle Field, and this rivalry is always close. And I think A&M actually has the better defense, so I think A&M wins in their home crib. So give me the Aggies.
Connor goes LSU. Going on the road in any SEC environment is really tough, but going to Texas A&M is really tough, especially when it's a ranked on ranked matchup. Both of these teams have played so many great games against each other, but my brain leans A&M, so I'm going to go Texas A&M. Seems like we're avenging on Connor this week. Just going opposite of whatever he goes.
I know.
But
So we're gonna get more distance from him in the standings, or he's gonna catch up and potentially pass us.
this is a sneaky good game in the noon window out in New Jersey. Number 12 Notre Dame, number 24 Navy.
I'm gonna do it again. I'm picking the upset. Here, like I last week, I successfully picked two upsets. If you remember, Illinois over Michigan, and then Tennessee over Alabama. Give me the midshipmen. That team is so fun this year. I'm a big fan of what Notre Dame is doing, but I just think the Armed Forces Academies they're just wagons right now. So I'm not gonna go against them. Give me Navy.
There could be an interesting predicament here because both of them are now in the American, so they have a conference championship they can go to. If this is the current track, Army and Navy could face each other in the American game, championship game. Then the following week, play the traditional Army Navy game. So we could have back to back weeks of Army Navy, and maybe one of them find a way to sneak into a college football playoff bid. So this is a big game for Navy. Connor goes Notre Dame. Navy is 10-point underdogs in New Jersey this week. Something tells me the midshipmen are going to get a noon upset in New Jersey. It just feels like it.
It feels right. It does.
It has upset written all over it, but are the Ducks potentially an upset alert this week as Illinois comes to Eugene
If
against the
Illinois
number one overall Ducks?
if Illinois was playing at home and this was a noon game where Oregon had to travel, we've seen some difficulty already with some West Coast teams going to the East Coast. Now, UCLA had other plans last week, but USC struggled against Maryland. But I just think this Oregon team is too good. I like Illinois. I think they're a very solid team. I just don't think they're on that echelon that Oregon is. So I think Oregon wins comfortably.
Yeah, Oregon is a true wagon this year. They're deserving of the number
I mean,
one
they're my
spot
pick
right
from
now.
the Big Ten, were they not? I'm going to stick with it.
They were. Yes, they are.
I'm
Yeah.
sticking with it. Oregon
Also,
is
your
going to be the
natty as
Big
well.
Ten. That too. I got to stick with that as well, right?
And
So
then Dylan Gabriel is your Heisman. You
I
get the
know.
trifecta of
I know.
Ducks.
I'm close. Like, come on, just keep it going, Oregon. Like, make me look good because last year my Heisman pick. Brock Bowers was solid. He just unfortunately couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah, he couldn't stay healthy. Connor going Oregon. I'm going to go Oregon as well. This has potential upset. This is not Navy upset written all over it against Notre Dame. This is Illinois have to go from the Midwest to the West Coast, and these Big Ten West Coast games. Either the West going to East or East going to West is always difficult. So maybe next year, after a year with these teams, traveling a little bit, maybe next year we'll start seeing some of those upsets. But it's going to be a clean sweep for the Ducks, our first clean sweep this week. So that means Illinois wins by default. Missouri will go on the road to a 2-loss Alabama team.
Yeah, I know Alabama hasn't looked that strong this year, but the last time they've lost consecutive regular season games was in 2007 in Nick Saban's first season. I know this is Kalen DeBoer's first season, but I haven't really been impressed with Missouri. They got beat down by A&M, and last week they struggled against a very mid-Auburn team. So I think Alabama just kind of wins off of default, although I think Missouri might give them some problems, but give me the Crimson Tide.
Connor thinks Missouri goes into Alabama and gives Alabama their third loss of the season. This is where I'm going to agree with Connor on this. I'm going to go Missouri for the upset. It feels like a different Alabama team this year. They seem more vocal. They seem more vocal. They seem a little bit more too confident as like we're Alabama. And you really didn't see that with Nick Saban. And Nick Saban had that mellow team. He was able to control the locker room a little bit. I think Kellen DeBoer is struggling with that a little bit. I don't really see that their offense isn't the same as it was with Nick Saban. That defense is a little soft, I think. You know, it just feels like if Missouri can go into Alabama and get off to a fast start, with Burden and their quarterback, I think this has a potential upset for Alabama, and we could possibly be talking about maybe on Sunday, next show, that Alabama could be either in the top 20 or unranked if they lose this weekend. So that concludes the game picks.
All right, and that should conclude our show for the night. So thank you again for everyone to tuning in. We will be back here next week, same time and same place. Go Bills.
Go Bills.